Coming up on this episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover.
But when they traded for him, I said, fine, I'm not for this, but extend him now. Because what are you waiting for? And everybody tells me, well, I need to see if he's a knucklehead. Well, then why did you trade for him? Why did you give up? If you carry any doubt, why trade for him?
Welcome to another episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. We're back with our third episode in our division preview series, looking at all the divisions before the 2025 NFL season. Byron, just me and you to start out the show this week. We're looking at our division, the NFC East. We've got a cracking guest, RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys, helping us talk about the Cowboys in detail. But how are you feeling taking a look at our very own division?
Yeah, it's been fun. 4 interesting teams. Again, I think one stands out for the wrong reasons, maybe, in the Big Apple. But yeah, 3 really interesting teams at the right side of things. I think any of them could make the playoffs. Dallas, Washington, and Philadelphia, obviously. So yeah, it's been really interesting to dive in. And yeah, can't wait to talk to RJ, who be good to speak to someone who knows what to talk about the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Blogging the Boys. I'm sure you read a lot of the stuff on Blogging the Boys as well as I do. So, yeah, real fortunate that RJ's agreed to spend some time with us. But yeah, he's great to talk to, and you'll hear that shortly. No major news for us to cover, but I think an opportunity just to shout out. Obviously, when we're recording this at different times, as this goes out, I'll be returning from a 2-week holiday. I've had a lovely time in Croatia, but we're recording this a couple of weeks in advance. And currently, the NFL Academy guys are touring plenty of colleges and different camps in America. And it almost seems every day a few of the guys are getting some unbelievable offers. Barney Short, who was one of our guests, so we've interviewed Enrique and Aspinall and interviewed Barney got an offer yesterday. So again, a couple of weeks ago from when this actually goes out. But Barney Short got an offer, which was fantastic from yesterday from Minute State football, which was cool. I'm trying to think where ND is, North Dakota. That's where Minute State is. Yeah, I just trying to get my state codes there. Hopefully, first of many for Barney. But some of the guys are absolutely crushing it. Nico Campas is one big old lineman. I think German Greek. He's had offers so far from Florida State, Georgia, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Illinois, Purdue, Miami of Ohio. Insane, like what these guys are doing, and it's just year on year these guys are getting more and more offers as they go, really recognizing the talent that is kind of there in the NFL Academy and what's here in Europe and
I think it's so encouraging as well. Like, you get so much cynicism around like the NFL becoming an international game and playing all these games abroad, but there is like a fairly direct correlation between it becoming a more global game and more nationalities and more nations being represented in the league. You know, we've seen this, I don't want to go too long here, but like, we've seen this with the soccer in the Premier League. As it became a more worldwide and global thing, like, did suddenly African players suddenly become good at football? Did they suddenly start getting recognised because there was more opportunities for them to play in Europe? I'm almost certain it's the latter. Same with South American players, etc., who were hidden from our view for years and years because we didn't have that worldwide view. And it's only a good thing. You know, you get more good players in wherever they might come from, whether they need a little more development because they haven't played through high school or what have you. It's only a good thing for the league. It's a great thing for these young men as well. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Bruno Werner was the other one, guy again, big offensive tackle out of Germany. He's like 6'9", 275, and I think he's only 18 years old, which is insane. But yeah, from Northwestern. Where else did Bruno got his offers from? Northwestern. I've got the list of them here. Where have I just said? Rutgers, Mississippi State. Big SEC schools, big Big Ten schools, and also Luca Wolf, tight end out of Austria. He's committed to not only got his offers, he's accepted and will be going to Cal. The Cal Golden Bears. In the fall of 2025. So yeah, crazy stuff, and it's just going to carry on. Like I say, the visits continued towards the end of June, so no doubt there'll be more and more offers, and hopefully we'll get to speak to Barney again, and fingers crossed the offers will come through for Enrique as well, because he's been out there as well, and these guys get the opportunity to go play college ball across 25, 26 and beyond, because they're working really hard, and
absolutely
deserve their opportunity, no doubt.
And it's nice that they got the good teams win, great teams covered bounce.
Yeah, the bump. Yeah, no, that absolutely. So I think we get maybe, let's assume, Barney gets some more offers as well.
Yeah.
If he gets NIL, maybe we get 1%.
Yeah. Barney, I'll take a shout out.
To ask. Yeah, take a shout out.
When he does his decision press conference, maybe just wear his good teams win, great teams cover hat.
Yeah, to take
That's
it off. Yeah. Yeah, so he takes that off to put on the other one. Yeah, we'll work something out with Barney, and hopefully Enrique as well. I think 1% a fair ask. We'll see, and also maybe just 1% of all future earnings.
Yeah, and we'll split that 2 ways. Me and you, Joe, didn't bother showing up for the intro.
Shit. Excellent. He gets nothing. Right, let's get into the NFC East. We will jump to our guest RJ Ochoa as we talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
First up in our NFC East preview, we're going to be taking a look at our Dallas Cowboys, and we've got a fantastic guest joining us. Not different take from mine and Byron's usual gripes and groans about the Dallas Cowboys, but we've got RJ Ochoa joining us, editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys on SB Nation, covering all things Dallas Cowboys. RJ, thank you ever so much for coming on to Good Teams Win, Great Teams cover. We really appreciate it. And welcome to the show. And first up, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Paul. Byron, thanks for having me. Great to be here across the pond. I love everything that you guys stand for in terms of being across the pond. Paul, I know your last name is Redman. I'm a Red myself, as you know. So I just really hate sports, to be quite honest with you. They offer me very little joy. I need to pick up a hobby. My son is 3 years old, so I'm just waiting for him to be old enough to build Legos, and then I can, put all my energy into that. That's what I'm hoping for, at least.
Nice. You can check out of everything and focus on the Legos. Well, speaking in the build-ups we organised a couple of weeks ago that you'd be coming on, but we've seen that kind of not only with Blogging the Boys, which we know there's a couple of I think one of the Cowboys UK guys writes for Blogging the Boys as well, Mike. But you've been busy as well. I saw interview with Joe Theismann recently that was really cool. Kind of what else have you been getting up to?
Yeah, I mean, I love the Cowboys, and I'm incredibly grateful to God to have the job that I do and to cover them. But I love a lot of things. I love golf. I know you kind of touched on, and so we've got a YouTube channel for Blogging the Boys where all my Cowboys content lives. But I just finally was like, I need to do something with this golf energy, so started up a different YouTube channel. And I don't know if y'all are familiar, but every July there's a tournament in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, the American Century Championship. And it features celebrities, athletes from all walks of life. They play in it. It's a Stableford scoring system. And so they've been doing some PR for that. And I've been able to chat with Joe Theismann, Grant Hill, son of a Cowboy. So it's been really cool, really exciting. Certainly in the middle of the crazy golf that we've been experiencing coming off the heels of the U.S. Open. So, it keeps me busy. That's really all I'm trying to do is just, put off reasons to go work out or to mow the yard type stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, it was a late one. So the final of the US Open Sunday when we're talking now. It was a little bit too late with the rain delay to stay up. So I had to catch it the Monday morning, but it was an incredible finish. How is your game coming on? I've seen some of the videos of you out kind of on the course. How's your game coming up in this kind of early part of summer?
Yeah, I live in South Texas, like very, very south, down near the border of Mexico. So it's always hot. It's always golf season here. But I have a 3-year-old, so that's kind of the handicap these days. Is just time to spend with him, and he gets all of it, rightfully so. But I'm okay. My dad retired last year, and so this year we went to Pebble Beach to kind of celebrate. So that was certainly the highlight of any golf I've done, really in all my life, let alone recently. But I can't complain. I'm swinging them straight right now, but you know how it is. You'll have that day that makes you wonder why you ever picked up a stick in the first place, and I'm sure it's coming from you soon.
Excellent. Well, if you're getting around Pebble Beach and things like that, then look, you're doing well, RJ. You're doing well for sure. And make sure you go follow RJ at RJ Ochoa. Also, please Blogging the Boys. Go support that through SB Nation. Like I say, Mike we've had the UK Cowboys guys on our show before. Mike's written some great articles on there as well, so make sure you go following and supporting, mainly supporting, of course, for the
Mike's all right. He's okay. He's cool.
Can't be letting him get too right. I'll remember that, RJ. I'll remember that. Well, like I said, let's get into kind of breaking down the Cowboys ahead of 2025. So, understandably, on our show, the Cowboys are a regular feature because me and Byron are both huge Cowboys fans. But I suppose there's 4 big headlines we want to discuss, RJ, plus kind of anything else. Anything else you think we should touch on? Apologies in advance for the real terrible puns we're going to put in the headlines. Like, it's what we do here.
We'll blame Joe, he's not here.
Yeah, we'll blame Joe. He writes most of them, and he's not here, so he can take the flak. First one, then, the new head coaching hire, Cowboys parted ways, if that's the right way to describe it, with Mike McCarthy. But Cowboys take a shot on Brian. Brian promoted from within, from OC to head coach, as Big Mike fired after 5 years in Dallas. Can he be as legendary as his dad, but win the big prize? I think the process around the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer was kind of the big story as we got kind of in sort of January, February. From your side of things, how did you see that process going of kind of how Dallas parted ways with Mike McCarthy and ended up with Brian Schottenheimer taking the job?
I think sometimes the Cowboys get painted into a light that isn't completely fair because of who they are. And it removes an ability for people to objectively evaluate them just because they're just this perpetual and forever meme. And we all understand that we're all adults, whatever. That being said, the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer, like, all of our worst assumptions were true. Like, everything they did about that seemed to be for attention and seemed to be out of petulance or out of arrogance. They costed themselves the ability to interview the Lions coordinators or the Chiefs coordinators because they dragged their feet. They dropped the news about being interested in Deion Sanders, of all people, during halftime of the Monday night wildcard game between the Rams and the Vikings. I mean, the whole thing just kind of reeked of the desperation that is more of a stereotype than a reality is my ultimate point. That being said, you're right. The process was horrible. And I think that for me, certainly tracing it back now that we're in the middle of June, the moment that the funk stopped, because this team was in a hellhole from the moment the Packers beat them in the wild card round last year until Stephen Jones's air quotes. That whole time was god awful. That whole time was misery. But ever since Stephen Jones's air quotes about the drought people say we're in, they have, for the most part, been functional adults. There have been the occasional whoops-a-daisy, Jerry Jones pretending not to know David Woolageta's name, things like that. But this offseason, call it a honeymoon effect for Brian Schottenheimer. Call it whatever you want. They have acted like a proper NFL franchise. And the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer is very suspect. It's an incredibly unique thing. He was the offensive coordinator for this team, and so that sounds really logical. But he didn't call plays. He hasn't called plays in a very long time. Yes, he's the son of one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, but they never really worked together. He cites people like Pete Carroll and Steve Spurrier as larger football influences on him. So, I mean, for a team that generally does things that are unconventional, I mean, this kind of took the cake for me. But Brian is kind of a wizard behind the microphone, and I think he's lured us all. We all are kind of humming, while he's talking. And so that, gives reason for a lot of optimism on top of the things like the Pickens trade and the draft and the active levels of free agency that we saw. So it's strange. It feels like the family member who we don't think much of, and they've shown up for Christmas dinner and they're a little bit more put together, right, than we expected and anticipated. We were ready to kind of go to the kitchen with our cousins and talk some crap about them, but we don't really have a reason to at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of with you. I think in the opportunities that we've seen Brian Schottenheimer in front of the media, in front of the press, how he's spoken, what he's spoken about, I think, are all things to think, actually, maybe this isn't quite the crazy hire it may have seemed, when Brian Schottenheimer's been 25 plus years in the NFL and not really been close to a position like this before. Byron, how are you seeing things as we're progressing now, as we're getting kind of towards the training camps and things like that in summer? What are you seeing from Schottenheimer, and what are you expecting things to be different from a Cowboys perspective?
Truthfully, I feel a bit more positive about Brian Schottenheimer now than I did throughout that process. I think, kind of like you're saying, RJ, like, he says the right things, he speaks well. he seems like he might be one of those. I've heard this from a couple of beat writers and NFL media of like, he might be someone who takes better to being a head coach than an OC, someone who is more of a leader than a schemer, which I dare say they might actually need. So I'm not going to say I'm optimistic about the season because I'm not, but I am kind of optimistic about the hiring more than I thought I would be. And that was awful to revisit the entire process. So cheers, RJ. Yeah, that was a real fun trip down memory lane.
I did like Byron, your leader, not a schemer thing. And people have made this comparison, and it's unfortunate to do so, but it feels similar to Nick Sirianni. He's obviously in his own way mastered that, with Philadelphia. And I don't think anybody can objectively deny that. And so, yeah, I mean, it is very, very, very strange. And look, obviously we have a bit of a time difference, but they dropped that news when they hired him on a Friday. Y'all might have been asleep. It was a Friday night at like 9 p.m. Central Time. And I mean,
time to top news, right?
Right. It was truly shameful. I mean, it carried that kind of air. It carried this like, man, I really hope nobody notices that we did this type of thing. And look, it's impossible to get anyone to agree on anything, right? Like, go to your local pub, go to your local whatever, and say pizza's cool. Somebody will think pizza's stupid, right? Like, you just simply cannot get a group of people to agree on anything. Yet there is not a soul among us who is not a liar who thought that this was anything other than objectively crazy. And so it is kind of strange, and maybe speaks to how desperate we are that it took 6 months for us to, not even 6 months, for us to come around and say, you know what, this is kind of cool. I'm with you, Byron. I'm not optimistic. That mostly, though, isn't because of Schottenheimer. It's just because of the attrition that this team has taken on me. Like, we all kind of know what the deal is at this point. But at the very least, I mentioned how much last year sucked. I'm excited. At the very least, it's fun. At the very least, it's interesting. Last year was like watching a movie with subtitles. This year is like Top Gun Maverick, and there's explosions and crazy sounds and all sorts of fun stuff. So at the very least, we'll be entertained than we weren't a year ago.
Yeah, excellent. Another key change, I suppose, in the coaching staff. Matt Eberflus comes in as defensive coordinator. Can Matt paint a better picture for Big D after a light breeze as head coach in the Windy City? Can Eberflus coach the 2024 28th ranked defense back to where it once was? We're not too far away from the Cowboys defense under Dan Quinn, although it ended horribly in the game that you referenced, RJ, in the game against the Packers. From that defense that had been so greatly improved for 2 or 3 years, that just took a huge backward step under Mike Zimmer last year. And there's other reasons for that. Injuries were a killer. Parsons injured, Diggs, Bland. It was just a struggle for the Cowboys defensively. What is Eberflus going to do differently? What is he going to bring that's different to the defense that Mike Zimmer tried to embed last year?
I think, first of all, we should temper expectations, because the Dan Quinn days were not only now 2 years ago, but this is their third defensive coordinator in as many years. I mean, that's a difficult thing to overcome. Now, again, because of the meme of who the Cowboys are, people just look at Matt Eberflus and say, oh, he's the guy that didn't call the timeout for the Bears and everything that everybody saw. But he was a fantastic linebackers coach for the Cowboys when he was on this staff. In fact, he probably was limited by Rod Marinelli, just kind of holding on to the role for too long. And it always seemed like Rod kind of learned from that relationship and allowed Chris Richard opportunities to shine that Eberflus ultimately didn't get because of the dichotomy. That being said, I think that's the difference. While Dan Quinn was incredible, we never really saw any supreme growth from the middle of the defense. We saw all this growth from up front and from the back end, and nobody's complaining about those things. But I mean, look, if anyone is unaware, there's an incredible article that Robert Mays wrote about Matt Eberflus's relationship with Sean Lee back when Robert was working for The Ringer. And that's, I mean, if he is a whisperer of anything, it's linebacker play. And I'll be honest with you both, I don't really trust this linebacker group, certainly until DeMarvion Overshown returns, if that even happens in 2025. But can Jack Sanborn develop into anything? Can Damone Clark refine some kind of form? Can Kenneth Murray capture the magic that led some people to believe he was a first-round grade? I don't know, but if I had to bet on anybody getting that out of them, it would be Matt Eberflus. And I think you ultimately trust that Micah will be Micah Parsons and will kind of help keep the ship afloat on the front end of things. And the back end, there are a lot of boomer bust propositions, because Trayvon Diggs could miss time. Deron Bland could not be the dude he was 2 years ago. Kaiir Elam could just be a bust. I mean, there's all these question marks, but the good news is that they've, bought a lot of pieces, so to speak, to be able to afford themselves the opportunity to figure something out along the way.
Yeah, we sort of saw that, didn't we? Pick up, and we'll touch on it a bit later on, but the kind of maybe the pieces that have been thrown away by other teams, right, so to speak, and potentially gambling that they can get, at the very least they can be depth pieces, particularly on the defense. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how it goes, because I know Eberflus, particularly the exit and the Bears, and just that after a promising start for Chicago last year, that ended up just. I went to watch the Bears beat the Packers in Week 18, but I went to the Bears game where they won previously, which was here against the Jags in Week 7 or Week 8, whenever it was, and that promise turned so quickly. But yeah, I'm interested to see, if they can, and maybe that Eberflus gets. Shamar James is someone I'm really excited about.
Right.
Can he Eberflus, shape James into being a real positive piece of the defense. But Byron, what are your kind of hopes for the defense heading into 2025 with a change of coordinator?
I think, without wanting to be too dismissive of some of the players who've come in, I think a lot of it is going to be, how much can Matt Eberflus make chicken salad out of chicken muck? Not to be too dismissive, but it's a lot of handoffs. It's a lot of players who weren't wanted where they were. I'm very intrigued by the first two defensive draft picks, Azaraku and Sean Ravel, who both had first-round hype and could be argued fell in the draft. It's always so hard to tell, what is a mock draft database telling you versus, what actually happens in the NFL. But there's certainly players that I knew of, and I'm not a draft wizard. So getting those potential high-caliber prospects in early is good. Jack Sanborn, obviously Eberflus knows well from Chicago, boards well as well. But I think ultimately trying to turn around players who are on the downswing, and how well can you do that? How quickly can you do that? I think it's, to me, kind of obvious that the defense is going to be the weaker spot of the team. But can you make it competitive? I worry more kind of on the DB room. Kaya Elam has had a good minicamp, but again, he's with Dallas for a reason. The Bills didn't want him anymore. Can they get enough play out of him to be a good DB in the NFL? And, what is Deron Bland going to be if he's not returning pick sixes? Ideally, he's doing that, 6-7 times a season again, but that is something you certainly can't rely on. So I think it's just getting to a level of competency, and ideally, once you set that floor, going from there. But I think the offense is going to be what sets a season as successful, if it's going to be a successful one.
RJ, Byron mentioned there about potential concerns in the secondary, as there is when these players are up for trade or get released. Is there any serious interest, do you think, or a serious possibility that the Cowboys could move on Jaire Alexander, who was released by the Packers last week, or Jalen Ramsey, who's up for trade from the Dolphins?
I would be shocked if they spend anything from a capital standpoint, which would obviously have to be the case for Jalen Ramsey. It is interesting how the Jaire Alexander thing kind of cooled, just like NFL wide. He was a name that, you picked whatever blog or Reddit subreddit you wanted. Every team wanted him a week ago, and now just everybody forgot he existed. I look, they're a team that generally kind of adds one or two players during training camp. And so we just happen to have begun the oasis to that point. And once they get going in Oxnard in late July, again, they generally bring in, the UFL just had their championship game. They've brought in the UFL guys, obviously, in the past, generally not defensively, obviously mostly special teamers, but still. And I think I have no problem killing them for that, or for inactivity, but it makes sense because I didn't even mention Savon Ravel like Byron did. I mean, they have several lottery tickets at corner. Lottery tickets might be putting it too aggressively, but again, we don't. Is Trayvon Diggs going to start on the PUP list? Is Savon Ravel? How are they going to move? How are they going to be? Can Kalen Carson prove anything? I mean, there's potentially enough. I don't. It could be anywhere on the spectrum between chicken salad and chicken muck. And so it could be great, but I think it bears monitoring over the course of the first couple of weeks before you really panic, you make a move. But I would argue that your lack of stability at the position is why you should extend Deron Bland, why you should extend a billion different people. But I mean, we've already sung that song a million different times.
So that was just going to be my next question, because we're talking about the defense, this Micah Parsons contract is just hanging over the summer, just like CD, just like Dak multiple times before. Is there any sense that they're going to get this done, or is this just going to wrangle on till the end of August, start of September, like we've seen so many times before?
I'll ask you both a question. So I say this all the time. One of the things I look forward to the most is something I don't watch anything of. And it's are you familiar with the Little League World Series that we have here in the States? So the Little League World Series, for any of your audience that isn't aware, is a baseball tournament for Little League teams. And so it's a lot of fun to watch the kids and whatever. And the reason I look forward to it is because when it gets here, it is the truest sign that football season is almost here. I love the NBA finals. I love the Stanley Cup finals, but we still have a ways to go, right? Like there's still, 10 miles left of the marathon, but the Little League World Series, there's 2 miles left. Like we are very close to the finish line. And the first pitch of that tournament gets thrown out on August 13th. So my question to you both is, what happens first, the first pitch or the Micah deal?
The first pitch.
So I agree with you. And I mean, I think we've reached a point, and when I say we, I don't mean just analysts or media or whoever, where we all acknowledge this is insanely dumb. It's actually past dumb. It's past silly or petulant, because it's inevitable. We all know that they're going to pay him, and they're going to pay him whatever market rate is in the moment that they do it. So the lack of willingness to do it immediately is just pure hubris, stubbornness. And look, I would have killed them, like I said, if they had not signed Dak Prescott a year ago, because I believe in Dak, and if you want to have that fight, I'm well versed in it. But that being said, something I said all of last offseason was you have to draw a line in the sand. You have to tell yourselves, pick a day, whatever day you want. And hypothetically, you should have said, okay, June 1st. If we do not have a deal done by June 1st, we live with it. We just live with that decision, and I would have killed them for it. But at least there would have been some logic supporting that, because by going at it the way they did and signing him on the day the season began, they quite literally did it in the most inefficient manner possible. And so with Micah, we're not quite there. There are still more grains left in his, hourglass, grains of sand than there were Dak at the time. But this is ridiculous. And now we've introduced new elements with TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson, elements that could raise the market, could whatever. And I don't like saying things, as I mentioned earlier, like, oh, they just do this for attention. Because I think that's lazy. I think that's not proper full analysis. But I have no choice but to believe anything else at this point. Or people throw out all the time, as I'm sure you've discussed, that they're cash poor. They don't have the actual liquid money at this point in time, which is preposterous to consider and to even conceive or say out loud. But at this point, we're so deep down the rabbit hole of illogic that I have to consider that as a potential reality. If you are this committed to acting this foolishly, then there must be some explanation, and maybe it's something as outlandish as that.
We've seen they're just going to head into another period, aren't they? Because there's Parsons, they're going to need to make decisions on Bland and Diggs, as you've mentioned,
or George Pickens. Like,
George Pickens, yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I was against the Pickens trade, like cards on the table, because I'm interested in being accountable for my actions. But when they traded for him, I said, fine, I'm not for this, but extend him now. Because what are you waiting for? And everybody tells me, well, I need to see if he's a knucklehead. Well, then why did you trade for him? Why did you give up like if you carry any doubt, why trade for him? So I'm curious if each of you thinks that the Cowboys should extend George Pickens now. Not just because I'm here. I want your honest thoughts.
It's only going to cost you more, isn't it? Ultimately, if it works out in that he does produce and he has a great year as a second behind CD Lamb, it's only going to cost you a lot more money in 8 months' time than it would have done when you traded him. So yeah, if you were adamant you're going to trade for him, you could have got him at a friendlier deal that wouldn't have been one of them bumper wide receiver contracts. But now you just put yourself into a corner where either you're potentially just going to lose him if he does well, or you're paying him a contract that's going to potentially kill the cap and cost you somewhere else. So yeah, Byron.
Yeah, totally. The thing. I don't know if you're a best ball player, RJ, for fantasy, but like draft like you're right. If you're trading for players, do it as if you're right. And yeah, absolutely, you're going to get him cheaper now than if he breaks out. And I think he has a great chance to do it. I think Dak's skill set aligns beautifully with what George Pickens does really well. I think it boosts the ceiling of the offense. But once again, it's half an action. You get the player in. Now we're going to see if he's good, and we might franchise tag him in a year's time because we can't get a deal done. And I do find it interesting. Pickens came out and said, I'm not here looking for a contract, but I think that might have been a different answer if a contract had been offered to him.
Byron, all due respect to the whole show, I think you're my favorite. Just because I agree with that entirely. First of all, why bet against yourself? Like, why would you go look for a house and be like, well, I hope this one gets hit by a tornado so that I can get it for cheaper? You know what I mean? Like, who would say that? Like, who would want that to happen? So I agree with you completely. Draft like do not bet against yourself. People said that like, well, what if Dak has a down year, we can get it for cheaper? Then why would you want him? Like, any success he has is tied to your success. The same with Pickens. And to that exact point, people are like, well, he said he doesn't want. Are you telling me that you're going to swear by everything that all these dudes say in front of cameras and microphones? Because those same dudes are telling us that Dak Prescott's awesome. And you know, Romo fan 123 believe that Dak sucks. So like, you can't just like cherry pick the things that you believe for it. I agree with you entirely. And if the three of us were in charge of representing Pickens and we got the phone call that the Cowboys are trading for him, we would have sat here and we would have said, our leverage has never been higher. In fact, if Pickens was my friend, I would have said to him, dude, I wouldn't even play. Like I wouldn't touch the field because you're eligible for a new deal and they just traded a 3rd round pick for you. So why would you even risk anything whatsoever? Your leverage, and people say, I'm sorry, I'm obviously passionate about this. Like to your point, if we view his value as suppressed right now because he's a knucklehead or whatever, blah blah. Okay, so what if he's to be clear, he is a perfect citizen. He's never been arrested. He's never committed a crime. Like we're just talking about being a little annoying on the football field. But what if he is a shining example of a teammate and has nothing but perfect marks throughout the entire course of the season and produces from a statistical standpoint? But again, why would you risk this? It's insane business. And the people who disagree with me also think the Cowboys are wrong for waiting on Parsons and waiting on Bland and waiting on Tyler Smith. So to me, this is cut from the exact same cloth.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so interested to see how it works out. Part of me, and we've discussed this a little bit as well. Like, part of me thinks that Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh very rarely get these things wrong in terms of when to release these guys. But I just feel with Pickens, there's something a little bit more there than the other guys that kind of went through this similar story with the Steelers recently.
Who's currently wanted for attempted murder?
One of them is currently wanted for attempted murder, yeah.
It's ultimate. I love him if he's on my team syndrome, right? Like if he's over there, he's stupid. Did either of you see this thing that was floating around about Aaron Rodgers with the highlighters? Did you see this story?
Yes.
That was insane. Like absolutely insane. But if I guarantee you, if he was on the Cowboys, we would all have tags or mentions or whatever. They're like, man, what like humanitarian giving these highlighters back to the secretary. Exactly. Like, and so, and even Pickens, like there were people who did not want him that the moment the Cowboys traded for him were like, oh, hell yeah, let's go. And to be clear, I'm very excited about the football potential that he provides. I think this is the best duo of pass catchers the Cowboys have had probably since 2014-ish with Dez and Jason Witten. But to act like there was zero risk, to act like there was just, zero reason for anybody that everybody else ignored this and that the Steelers wanted to move on, that the Cowboys are this genius team. The only people, who saw the beautiful thing right in front of them is, I think, drinking the Kool-Aid just a little bit too much.
That's fair. And we'll see how Pickens does get on in this offense.
I'm excited, to be clear. I didn't mean to make that completely negative. So my apologies.
Absolutely. That's cool. No, I think we are. I think it's just it's just a process. Sometimes it's not necessarily the destination with the Cowboys. Right. Sometimes it's just the process and journey of how you get there. And our last one, I'm real sad. I think real sad thing, especially for how long potentially me and Byron have been following the sport and the Cowboys. Zach Martin was definitely one of the greatest Dallas Cowboys we've seen in our time following the team. And it was sad to see Zach hang it up this past off season. That's Zach Martin retired. Obviously, Tyron Smith left. Travis Frederick, so kind of the pillars of that last great version of the O-line that the Cowboys had. But it's into new territory now, and we've seen that the Cowboys have replenished the O-line after Zach Martin's retirement.
I love that.
Really focused on the Tylers on the O-line. And can the Cowboys' new gunslingers be create a fortress, or is it going to be a frailty? Last year, I think it's probably the first time in a while where we've seen the O-line really struggle. That was one of the frailties of the Cowboys last year, especially just an inability to run the ball, and that just wasn't on running backs. O-line really, really struggled. So we've got the three Tyler's on the line now. Guyton, Smith, and Booker, all first-round picks. With Cooper Bebe, who obviously had a pretty decent first year playing at centre, with the more experienced Terrence Steele. How do you think this O-line's going to go? Because it feels like the Cowboys will go as far as this O-line's going to take them.
Yeah, I think that it's easy for us to draw the comparison to 2014 when Zach arrived. But I mean, with all due respect to the current offensive line, they don't have what Tyron had just become or was becoming then, and what Travis Frederick was becoming. And even then, I know that he caught a lot of heat from people, but Doug Free was an incredible player for the Cowboys. Ronald Leary was an incredible player, and obviously Lyle Collins joined the next year. And so I think that there will be some learning curves, some learning bumps. I think that we're all like right now, I think the biggest question is Tyler Guyton. I think we're willing to give Tyler Booker some benefit of the doubt. And honestly, if Tyler Guyton fails, then it really doesn't matter how good Tyler Booker is or isn't, because Tyler Guyton happens to play left tackle. And so I think they'll probably be somewhere around the 13th best offensive line this year. And I think that, you would hope and you would imagine that with a quarterback of the, mental capacities that Dak Prescott holds, that would be enough, and that your defense can kind of keep you in games. And that's why, I think it's not hard for us to come up with a list that has some demerits to kind of be cautious about this team. But at the same time, we can, have pros, and that's what makes them so controversial. But yeah, I mean, I think that give them 2 years is kind of how I feel. I think by the time it feels like, circa Zach Martin, vintage Zach Martin, because that run, obviously 2014 through 2019-ish, I mean, they were untouchable. And, we carried the water and we fought the good fight in the way that Jason Garrett preached to finish it. And, it's sad. I started getting into this world in 2015, which was obviously Zach Martin's second year. So it makes me feel a certain type of way. It is, strange to kind of watch them retire and move on. I mean, Dak Prescott is the longest tenured player on the team at this point in time. And Dak, as a rookie, went to Valley Ranch briefly, but for the most part, we're now talking about players who only ever joined the Cowboys once the star. We've had, different sectors. Like there were some players who had still played at Texas Stadium, but now you've got almost nobody that has ever even set foot inside of Valley Ranch.
Yeah, it's just making me feel real old as well, RJ. I think.
Good times, yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully a new wall built there and a long tenured O-line again that gets back to being one of the top in the NFL. We would hope to see. Just moving on, then, we've talked about a lot of the changes, and we'll just flash them up on the screen. We will just disappear for a quick second if you're watching on YouTube. But yeah, we talked about some of the our free agency and trade. So George Pickens being one. Revamp of the running back room as well, I suppose, has been another, big thing with the fact that we had Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders coming in free agency, and we've had the two running backs in the draft as well, Jaden Blue, Phil Maffer, and there's still Juice Vaughn as well as part of that. Who do you think, who's going to kind of come out, or is there, rephrase that question, is there going to be kind of a clear leader here in this running back room, or is it going to be a committee approach, do you think, RJ?
I think that we're definitely looking at some sort of committee. I think that, in Brian Schottenheimer's ideal world, Javonte Williams has 800 yards. Miles Sanders has 712 yards. Jaden Blue has 600 all-purpose yards. I think it's an amalgamation. If you look at his second season with the New York Jets calling plays, it was LaDainian Tomlinson, but it was Sean Green as well. And I think that, he kind of wants that balance. And, it's strange to have this fight, because we all have said and I think believe that running backs don't matter, but they matter a little. And they certainly matter more than the Cowboys are willing to say or willing to prove. But I mean, these are proper qualified running backs in Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. And I think that those are going to be enough for them to depend on, just not enough to be difference makers the way that Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry are, your one-of-ones across the rest of the NFL.
And is there anyone in terms of whether that's coming from free agency or the trades as well, or through the draft that we've kind of not mentioned or that isn't really being talked about, that you foresee potentially making a real big impact for the Cowboys in 2025?
Obviously George Pickens is the name, right? Like he's the first one you flock to. I really think if we acknowledge he's in his own special box by himself, I talked about Kaiir Elam. I think he has the potential to provide at least the largest return on investment, especially considering the questions around corner. You mentioned, Paul, about how the Cowboys have kind of taken, shop through the bargain bin, first round picks here, first round picks there. And if he's anything like the player he was in Gainesville at Florida, then all of a sudden you've really kind of helped this group out a little bit. And so, and similarly, I hate the term injury prone. I wouldn't say it about Dak Prescott, but I also wouldn't deny that he's missed time more often than not each of the last 5 seasons. So the Joe Milton trade could prove a high return on investment relative to how valuable the quarterback position is. So I think those things speak loudly about the way they view the team and the way they wanted to hedge their bets in certain places. But if I have to give one name, it's probably Kyrie Elam.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm interested, of course, hopefully Dak will play all 17 games. If he has to sit out for whatever reason, I'm really excited to see Bazooka Joe, because I mean, in those fleeting appearances for the Patriots,
right?
I mean, he's real exciting.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to it will be fun. Like all due respect to Cooper Rush, who earned his keep and who was an amazing soldier and deserves, a statue in a lot of ways. It was so boring. I mean, it was not fun. I mean, again, all due respect, but this may suck and may be horrible, but damn it, it will be entertaining. And that's really kind of, if we can't win, at least dance for us. You know what I mean? I'll pay for a ticket to the circus, but I need the elephants to hold the monkeys up and jump through fire and things like that.
Excellent. Well, let's get into chatting a little bit about potential record for the Cowboys. So we're going to start having a look at the odds, and we'll start, as we always do, with the win total. So we start, I say we don't create the lines. Vegas has got the Cowboys at 7.5, over under 7.5 wins for 2025. So 20-27, so just short of even money for over. 21-20. To hit the under, so leaning towards that kind of more 8-win line, I think, than Vegas. We do the odds in the UK fractional way. Sure. So yeah, under 7.5 is probably plus 105, over minus 115, maybe 120 is probably where that's at. How do you think 7.5 wins? I mean, I'm leaning. I think I've got the Cowboys over that, not by many. But where are you, RJ, on the Cowboys record?
I've seen this bump a little bit, depending on your sportsbook du jour, to 8.5. If you can get 7, if you can get 8.5, but if you can get 7.5, I would run. I mean, do what you want to with your money. And again, the three of us here, Paul, Byron, myself, I don't think any of us are the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl, because fans like that don't really exist of this team the way people make them out to, seem they do. But if you think this team is winning 7 games with a healthy Dak Prescott, even if he misses a game or two, you're just, and again, no one is saying anything other than how many games they're going to win. You're not being fair or accurate or living in reality. I used to say this stat when I first got into this world about Tony Romo, and I don't know if either of you know this, but he never played a game in which he was mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. I don't know if either of you knew that. You don't hang a banner for that. You don't go in the Hall of Fame, but it's kind of cool. And it's sort of representative of how you master winning 8 to 9 games every single year. Now, Dak has played in a game where he's mathematically eliminated, but this team has won fewer than 7 games twice since he's been on the team. Once was in 2020 when he played in only 5 games, and they still only won 6 games. And last year when he missed half the season and they won 7 games. So if you don't believe that Dak Prescott on last year's team was good for one more win, then again, you're not tethered to reality in my mind. So I will take the over on this. I think you're getting a Cowboys bias, a media bias, a meme bias, if you will. I wouldn't take them to win the division right now. I think that jury's still certainly out, but 7.5 is pretty easy territory in my mind.
Yeah, Byron, where have you kind of got the Cowboys record wise?
9-8. A couple of them, it's kind of up in the air. Obviously, it's trying to predict the full season, but yeah, I'm at 9-8, so I would take the over. But yeah, I would rather take 7.5 than 8.5.
See, 9.5 is where I struggle truly, which is, I would really sweat over 9.5, but 7.5 is not a big deal for me.
Yeah, I'm saying I've 8 and 8, 8 and 9, 9 and 8. That last, minus week 18, that last kind of third of the season is a rough go. So I think you need to stack up wins early. I think they can get to that second Eagles game, maybe being 7-3. And then you think, well, if you can, go 500 over those difficult games down the end of the season, then you get into, 10-11. But I think that's going to be what we know about this Cowboys team, certainly under Mike McCarthy's run, is that when they play teams with winning records or playoff teams from the previous season, their winning record wasn't great. I think they were maybe 30%, winning record, against kind of those teams. And that's what that 6-game run does from the Eagles the week before Thanksgiving to week 17 poses. An unprecedented run, I believe, 6 games against 11-plus win teams from the season before. Nobody's had to run that gauntlet before in the NFL. So Cowboys are going to have to do it. And I think they're just going to need to be in a real good position, have 7, maybe 8 wins on the board before that starts, if you're talking about competing with Philly or competing with the Commanders, whoever it ends up being, to win the division in 2025.
I think that's well said. And just to add to your point, because I think it's important to have perspective, that run includes 2 Thursday games, both of which fall on holidays, which are difficult. You got things going on, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And so you've got to manage tickets and presents and, travel and family, whatever, and anything else that pops up in life in between. So yeah, like, again, I'm not saying that this is a, lock it up and throw away the key, but if you are interested in a wager, I really, this is not a team that bottoms out. That's just, again, they're a team that does a lot of bad things, but they don't win 7 or fewer games. I like to say they're generally relevant around Christmas time. You never do your Christmas shopping with them out of the race.
And as well, just on that schedule note as well, you mentioned kind of a couple of holiday games there. I think I've got this right in just reviewing the schedule again earlier today. I think they've got 8 standalone games in 2025. Across the prime times, across Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and the kickoff. And it just feels strange to have that many standalone games when you've been a 7-10 team the year before.
I mean, I would feel that way if they were anybody else. Like, the Cowboys tax is very real. I'm sure you saw the Get Up prompt on Monday here that was debating Dak Prescott's legacy. I mean, that's just who they are. And personally, I'm very grateful for it. It helps put food on my table. But that's life. I mean, and that's where, like, like what I do for a living is unique. I get that. And, my family will be like, well, doesn't it get old? Like, thanks. And my son is 3. He was born the night before Thanksgiving, which just like was pure chaos from a work standpoint, whatever. But that's like who they are. They're a team that's like forged in the chaos. So you kind of get used to it. And it's really nice as an NFL fan, as I know you both are, for this to be the case, because you get to hang out with Scott Hansen so much. You know what I mean? Like you get to enjoy the Red Zone channel generally through the noon window. And the occasional 3:00 game, whatever, you gotta get out of town. But all these primetime games are wonderful in that sense. That's why, like, the opener, the fact that they're in it is so awesome, because we get that first Sunday on the couch doing absolutely nothing except celebrating the win.
Don't have to worry about the Cowboys that first Sunday. Excellent, which is good. Always good. Just moving on then, just a couple of the other ones to make the playoffs. So yeah, just over 2-1 to make the playoffs, 21-20 or 21-10 or plus 210, and no heavily odds on to not make the playoffs. So the reason, obviously, the line indicates that 8 wins where they've roughly got them isn't going to be enough to get you in. It'd be a freak for 8 wins to win the NFC East. We've seen some teams win it before, but yeah, I mean. Can they put enough of a run together to pinch the division, or at the least sneak a wild card spot in the NFC?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that they're a playoff team, because I think that, they probably, like I said, I would struggle with 9.5. I might, if I'm feeling generous, if I've had a Diet Coke, give them 10 wins on the season. And that's generally enough for a wild card spot. I take nothing away from the Eagles, but I think that we all probably feel they were not as formidable last year as they were in that 22 season when they were so highly annoying. So, it's fair to expect some regression to the mean there. I think it's certainly fair to expect some regression to the mean from Washington, and regression to the mean from Detroit or Green Bay or Minnesota. I mean, like, all these teams and whatever open up pathways and, routes just to being a playoff team. So I have pretty fair confidence that they'll be a playoff team. Again, not in any way guaranteeing they'll win the Super Bowl and this is the year and blah, blah, blah. But we forget, because they're the Cowboys and people can't evaluate them fairly. They went to the playoffs 3 years in a row. The Buffalo Bills do that and people throw parades, right? Like, I mean, the Cowboys do it, and it's like, oh, well, they're perennial losers. And again, we can bicker about their rankings in different areas. They have franchise quarterback, rank him where you want, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. He passes that proverbial test. They have maybe the best pass rusher in the NFL, and they have a top 5, top 3 wide receiver. You can have Paul it could be us. You know what I mean? And as long as the three of them are on that team, they've got a chance. Like that you essentially need those things, and then just some asparagus and potatoes and corn or whatever. If you've got the meat taken care of, everything works itself out.
Yeah, so let's see if they can get what they need, the production from the supporting cast this year. We shall see. And then lastly, we'll see if you're tempted, RJ. So 6-1 to win the division. I took them at 7-1 immediately after the George Pickens trade because my level of optimism was through the roof at plus 700. That was a few weeks ago now. Not so confident anymore. 22-1 to win the NFC and 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. Any of them tickle your fancy at all?
I mean, I'd take the Super Bowl just because of the odds. You know what I mean? Like it's the NFL. You know what I mean? And if they got hot, I would love to hold on to that. Everything else, I think I carry too much logic towards not doing. But I mean, look, I've tried very hard in the past to, prophesize why it's going to happen. And this is the reason why. And this year means it's been this. And that it's the third year of Dak and the third year of Aikman, and like tried to draw all these insane parallels over a life. And the most insane of them would be that they went 30 years and dominated the NFL. And it took them 30 years once more to get back to the top of the mountain. And they're the Cowboys, so something that hilarious is truly possible. And so, like, honestly, that is the most, prominent force driving me towards potentially taking them at 50-1 to win the whole thing.
Excellent. Byron, any optimistic punt from you on Cowboys to get to the Super Bowl or to win it? I mean, no, because you've left yourself on mute, so clearly.
God darn it.
That bodes well.
I do like them making the playoffs at 21-10. And I think you made a real good point, RJ. Like, the top teams in the NFC are even better than they were this time last year, or more to the point at the end of last season.
Yeah.
I would maybe argue the Rams, maybe. But, yeah, the Vikings, rookie-ish quarterback. The Lions, huge losses on coaching and players, with the center just retiring. Bucks lost Liam Cohen. And the 49ers lost everybody. So...
And the Bucks, like, I mean, maybe the Bucks are fine. Are the Falcons going to take a step? Are the Panthers? You know what I mean? Like,
it seems to be scared of, certainly.
I'm sorry, Byron, but where would you rank Dak in NFC quarterbacks? How many NFC quarterbacks are you taking ahead of Dak? I think the answer is maybe 2, but maybe a third.
Oh, I'd struggle to think of 2. Yeah, I did have my QB list done
recently.
I'll
get Stafford. Stafford goes ahead of Dak.
I had Stafford then Dak. Yeah, that was it.
And maybe
Daniels.
Maybe you want to go Jaden. Maybe you want to go Jalen Hurts. Maybe the Teflon of the Super Bowl. No one's going to fight that. Whatever. But like the point is, it's a quarterback. It's a quarterback league. Like that's what this comes down to.
When I ranked my quarterbacks really recently because it's the off season, I had them Stafford then Dak, literally back to back. And there's one of my bets actually. It's not going to make my final. At the end of our state division shows, we always do our team bet for the division and player bet for the division. This isn't going to be my player bet for the division, but Dak Prescott to lead the league in passing yards is 8-1. And you look at that running back room and you look at those pass catchers. If I had to bet on one side dominating more than the other.
And you look at that defense, maybe it takes a step back or whatever, all the concerns we talked about. It's a great point.
Exactly, yeah. So plus 800 on Dak to lead the league in passing. And actually one of my early season bets was already CeeDee Lamb to be the offensive player of the year at plus 2,000, 20-1. Because he's due one. Jefferson's had one. Cooks had one. Chase has had one. He is that guy. He can do that. So I love this passing attack. And yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Dak. I don't want to say apologist, just a fanboy. He's an incredible quarterback. He has been since he entered the league. So yeah, he could have a season where he leads the league in passing without any doubt, in my opinion.
Just to interject, because you said a phrase I liked, Micah, if anyone is due like an award at their respective position, Micah is due that, because who doesn't have one right now of the perennial guys? It's him and Max Crosby. Yeah. That's it. And so there's no way that any of the kind of main guys do anything super saiyan enough to win another. So if you don't get this deal done, you are really, really playing with fire relative to Micah.
Be great to see that again. The production and that gets him an award that maybe what he should have got one already. Who knows? 5 years in where we are with Micah Parsons. RJ, that wraps us up. We could spend the whole 90 minutes of the show on the Cowboys, but sadly we have to talk about the Giants, the Eagles, and the Commanders for the rest of the way. But RJ, we really, really appreciate you coming on thanks for giving up your time to come talk Dallas Cowboys with us. And make sure you go follow RJ Ochoa, and also Blogging the Boys. Go follow it, go support it. Lots of great, talented writers there, and RJ is the man in charge.
I appreciate that. If I may, I have one final question. I don't know what the odds would be on this, but what do each of you think is higher or more likely? The Cowboys, let's say, reaching the NFC Championship game, or Man United finishing in the top 4?
Cowboys.
Thank you for that.
I don't like Man United, but
Sure, I'd say United's finishing the top 4 more likely than the Cowboys getting to the conference championship.
I think I would too, but to be clear, I don't feel confident in either. But I think the odds of stumbling into the top 4 are larger than stumbling into the title game. It's kind of how I view this. I think we all think it's going to take, they're going to have to draw the way the Rams did last year, like this weird Vikings team, or whatever. Or we've seen these other teams, get like a Case Keenum team in the playoffs. They're going to have to catch like one of these weird teams instead of having to go through murderer's row like the Niners every year. So, give me a Ruben Amorim squad. I'll do it. Let's party.
United will be okay, RJ. United will be okay. United will be okay, I think.
Paul, who do you trust more, Bruno or Dak? It's my last one for real.
Oh, that's fair. I'd probably Dak, yeah. I'd probably trust Dak more. That's probably fair. Bruno's been so good, though. People don't see it. Bruno's been... We could do a whole hour and a half on Man United as well.
I don't want to answer this. I'm not going to answer my own question. I'm sorry I made you answer.
Yeah, all right. I see how it is, RJ. RJ,
I'll say Dak because we're here. I'll say Dak. Fine. I'm on record. Cool.
Good. RJ, thanks ever so much for joining us. Yep, go follow Blogging the Boys. Go support the site on SB Nation. And RJ, hopefully we'll get you back on during the season. Maybe see how it's gone after a few weeks, and we can have you on one of our preview shows for the season.
Anytime. Let me know.
Excellent. Well, we'll throw it over to myself, Byron, and Joe as we talk through the other 3 teams in the NFC East.
Thanks to RJ Ochoa there for talking us through the Cowboys. Make sure you're following Blogging the Boys and RJ's golf content as well. Go see how he's improving over the summer. Joe, Byron here for the rest of the show. We're going to look at the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Giants. Joe, should we start with the Washington Commanders? First up. Let's have a look at the headlines for the Commanders then. Actual trade deals happening in Washington. Trades for veterans, including Debo and Tunsil, adds to a roster that's re-signed old-timers, Ertz and Wagner. Commanders or Dad's Army? I'm terrible at lining up these puns, Joe, but yeah, that was poor delivery, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think either you added some of these in as well, so I think either some of yours or Byron's puns in there. So.
Oh, right, okay, so you absolved yourself from responsibility, right? That's fine. Yeah.
I'll take credit for Dad's Army. I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, Dad's Army.
The trade deals is really good. I don't know whose trade deals it's not mine, but that's really good.
Yeah.
Because there isn't any happening in Washington.
No deals, all tariffs. But Commanders, let's, I suppose, focus in on the actual headline. Commanders made some deals very early on in sort of the free agency period to bring in veterans, Debo, give him a different option, Laramie Tunsil to give some strength to that offensive line, and then you've got some Wagner. It's all building a balance, isn't it, of kind of the young guns that the Commanders have got, plus kind of all these been there, done that kind of guys. How do you think the balance is of the roster in Washington, and is it going to help them? I say push on, because push on is a Super Bowl at this point, given they got to the NFC Championship last year. But how's that kind of balance the roster heading into 2025?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a bit of a worry in terms of the last few years they haven't drafted well. So a lot of the youngsters are not theirs, or they're not proven to be stars. So obviously Terry McLaurin was a few years ago now, which we'll talk about going forward. But have they really drafted someone who's stuck around, because they traded away one of them playing Jonathan Allen. So it's I think it's not great they're young players, because it's been a few years. Obviously the hit on Jalen Daniels, that was a massive hit, and if you get the quarterback in, you sorted, and the veterans around him helps to lift the floor. But it's where that ceiling is with these players. Another year added on to the treads of the tires. So I'm slightly worried for some of these teams, and I think they might be able to get one more year out, but they certainly got to start hitting on some draft picks if they want to sustain this success, especially when they've got to pay Jaden Daniels in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you can't blame this regime for the prior mistakes, but I mean, you look at the picks before Jaden Daniels' first round picks: Emmanuel Forbes, Jahan Dodson, Jamin Davis, Chase Young. I mean, are any of them on the team even? Never mind contributing. Then, geez, Dwayne Haskins before that, rest in peace. Like, it's just miss after miss after miss. It really hinders your ability to build and have sustained success. I don't know if I love, truthfully, either of the deals, Debo or Tunsil. I think the players who are probably past the best. We've seen last year, Larry Tunsil had the second most penalties amongst a lot of offensive linemen behind only Tyler Guyton. There was obviously issues in Houston that led them to get rid of him. He's been a high-level player in the past, but I'm not sure he's there now. And then along with, on that O-line as well, Sam Cosmi, I think, is going to be out the majority of the season. He got injured very late in the season, so if he comes back, it's going to be mid to late in the season. We'll get on to what else I've done on the O-line, but I don't think Debo's the player he once was. I think a lot of what he does is going to be tangled up with Austin Eckler's role, which, 2 is better than 1, but I don't think they've really boosted that offense in any kind of meaningful way, unless Debo has a bounce back year. Zach Ertz had a great year last year, but again, he is aging. He is getting older, and what's behind him if he does take a step back? John Bates, Ben Sinnott. There's nothing there that has shown any reason to be excited about. We are looking at more of a dad's army than a new, set of commanders.
Excellent. Let's move on to headline 2. And hopefully not another con artist in DC, as Trey can't afford many misses. With limited draft picks, Commanders attack premium positions early.
Yeah, so I took Josh Connolly in the first or tackle, and then Trey Amos at cornerback in the second at pick 61. I mean, Trey almost had some hype of being a late first round pick, so looks like the value was there. But along with trading for Marshawn Lattimore late last year, and statistically, the defense wasn't too bad in the passing game. They were pretty easy to run on last year, but Lattimore needs to. I mean, there was talk that they might release him just after they traded for him in this offseason, so he hasn't been a big hit. I think Trey Amos is going to have to contribute pretty much immediately. They did have Jonathan Jones start secondary as well. Mike Senstra, I think, was a success last year. He's one of the, again, that regime had their first draft last year, and I think they've done really well. But you look at that DB room, and you're not moved by it. And I think Josh Connolly's going to have to come in and start right away, which for a late first round pick, it's maybe not the plan you'd want. You maybe want to give him some time to develop. But if he's good enough, he was very highly rated. So if he can be ready to go week 1, that's a positive. But I do think with Sam Cosmi being injured, that O-line, I think, maybe well be taking a step backwards from last year where they did outperform their, the sum was better than their part, I think.
Yeah, and especially like the teams are playing as well. You think, Cowboys, Eagles, and Giants have all got on paper impressive pass rushers. So to throw a youngster in straight away, he's got he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders to protect, the franchise quarterback, and who obviously can escape and help with that situation. But we've seen it time and time again where a quarterback can only do so much when you've got a terrible offensive line. Yeah. And what you don't want is to have the drop what CJ Stroud had. Again, we all were there thinking, CJ Stroud's going to kick on, and we think the same with Jaden Daniels. But with a terrible O-line, things can happen, and suddenly he's in the same position where he's a good quarterback, but he's not the top 5, top 3 quarterback where he's got the potential to be.
Excellent. Let's move on to headline number 3 for the Commanders. Commanders ghosting Scary Terry's contract. Scary Terry contract situation giving Commanders sleepless nights. What kind of contract should the wide receiver command? Similar. I suppose other players in other teams going into similar situations. Terry McLaurin once paid. He had a huge season last year. I don't know how viable that is to reproduce that, as it was very touchdown heavy. Thinking of it from a fantasy perspective, it's probably a huge regression candidate for 2025 because it's unlikely that a huge spike of touchdowns in one year carries over to the next. But without doubt, he is their number one target, number one receiving. He's the production of the offense. Is he going to get something that he's happy with, or are the Commanders going to have to kind of just play the long game here and potentially trade him away? Where's the thought on what's going to happen with McLaurin here?
I don't think they can take any steps to trade him away. That he's kind of the Jenga piece of that offense. You look at what else they have on in that wide receiver room. Noah Brown's already injured. Luke McCaffrey's completely unproven. Debo, we will see. But Debo's always worked best with a, Brandon Ayuk type who, stretches the defense, gets downfield. And then after that, Jalen Lane's a rookie who very little expected of year one. KJ Osborne, Michael Gallup came out of retirement to sign with the Commanders. They have to pay Terry McLaurin, even if it's just a short-term extra salary bonus type where it's just more money today. I'd be nervous about extending him long-term because I totally agree on the unsustainability of last year. Last year he had more touchdowns than he's had by a lot. His highest previous total was 7. He had 13 last year. So
yeah, he had 7 in his rookie season, and then he's not had more than 5 since. Until
his prior 3 seasons, he scored 14. Last year, he scored 13. So,
but I think it's also like when you look at the quarterbacks he's had the last 5 years, he keeps hitting 1,000 yards as a wide receiver. He's turning 30. I think what like Byron said. I think a short term. What I've just read now is the 16th among NFL receivers in pay. I think they might just give him like a 1-2 year extension, get up to like 30 million, whereas in the top 10. Debo's will be a free agent next year as well, so maybe do that short term, see where he's at after another year instead of going all in and give him a 4 or 5 year. Because I think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers we've had in the league the last few years. I've always loved him, and it's been one of the one of the secret passions where it's he's just such a great wide receiver. He doesn't get the flowers for it for being in Washington, where they usually weren't doing too well. So now he's actually got a quarterback. Hopefully he gets a decent contract out of it because he deserves it.
It's interesting because when we talk about it, because he's not had a 90 reception season, he's not had a season above 1,200 receiving yards, and there's this noise around it. I think that is he has been good. He's been fairly consistent. I just don't know if there's a bit here.
I think what Joe says, though, consider the quarterbacks, consider the play callers. I think if you put Terry McLaurin in almost any other situation over the last 6 seasons, he'd have been a Pro Bowler repeatedly. And he's got voids in his contract next season, so he's coming up free agency. I think maybe a 2-year extension, bang a load of upfront money on it. I just think just makes too much sense. They've got the money to do it. They've got plenty of cap space this year. They're not going to be paying Jaden Daniels this year or next. He's the cornerstone of your offensive franchise. Just don't Dallas it. Don't Cincinnati it.
Don't Dallas it. Yeah.
It just makes too much sense. Don't get it to be a holdout or a hold in. Don't upset your big time players. You don't have that many of them. Pay them on.
Fair. Excellent. Let's move on then. Next up for the Commanders, Washington's leaving FedEx, return to sender. Commanders return to the Capitol as deal approved for new stadium at the site, or the old site of RFK Stadium. Finally, a stadium that doesn't deliver disappointment. Obviously, the Commanders been in Landover, Maryland for quite a period of time now. That stadium is falling apart. It literally shits on the fans. It almost killed Jalen Hurts. How big is this? We've seen obviously this new ownership come in now since obviously Dan Snyder went, and everything seems to have been a positive move so far. I suppose we're expecting it in the next few years that the Commanders will return to Washington. Just feels right that they're going to head back to the Capitol.
Yeah, definitely. And just more and more, this new ownership group doing the right things. I think putting the goodwill back in Washington. Nice to see a headline about RFK that doesn't involve vaccines or anything worse than that, dare we say. So, that seems like a net positive. And yeah, I think I wouldn't say I'm overly optimistic about the 25 Commanders team, but overall, since this ownership group took over, I think it's been nothing but flowers and nothing but good things. And I think there's just yet another one. The sooner they can wash that full Dan Snyder stink off them by leaving Landover, the better. And yeah, just another step in the right direction for them. So again, wheels up.
Excellent. Yeah, be forward to what looks like a proposed fantastic new stadium for the Commanders. Just looking there, I suppose, at key transactions, we've talked a little bit about it in terms of the trades, what's come in, what's gone out. I think it was only the 5 draft picks that the Commanders made in 2025. But who's going under the radar, and who maybe that we haven't kind of shone any light on, or we're expecting to have a positive impact for the Commanders in 2025?
Yeah, the one I was going to bring up, maybe not positive, but the Javon Kinlaw contract seemed a bit mad that they brought him in to be their starting D tackle. Obviously, didn't work out in San Francisco, didn't work out the Jets, and they've lost Jonathan Allen on that line. I do worry about that. He's going straight into the starting. Well, so far on the depth chart, he's starting at defensive tackle with Eddie Goldman behind him, a few players. I'm interested in how Jalen Lane's position going to be. Like what Byron said, they've got quite a lot of veterans there with like Noah Brown, Gallup, KJ Osborne, like Luke McCaffrey is going into I think his second year. So yeah, how Jalen Lane comes in and can he make that position his own? I think that's going to be a big add, and there's not much. When you're getting a 6th, 7th round, is two out of your 5 picks? You just hope that they might be on special teams, but yeah, we'll wait and see.
Excellent. Byron, any shouts from you in terms of contributors for the Commanders that we haven't necessarily touched on?
I am interested by Ja'Cory Cross-Game-Merritt, the running back, just because I think it's such an open room behind Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler. He had his moments last year, but I don't think he's long for starting in the league, sadly. Jeremy McNichols, again, had 1 or 2 weeks where he had a spike last year. But I think Cross-Game-Merritt has a good skill set as complementary to Brian Robinson, so it'll be interesting to see if he gets on the field at all and if he can make any impact based on that. But again, they didn't. A lot of veterans, so I don't think they've done too much to get excited about, sadly. So I think he's one that will keep an eye on through training camp and see if he gets to make an impact for me.
Yeah, I think Dante Fowler is going to be a massive, massive miss for them. He's come back to Dallas for 1 year. Every time I watched the Commanders last year, it feels like Dante Fowler was making a big play defensively for them. He's having like a bit of a renaissance. I think he's going to be a huge, huge miss for them. And we'll see if they've got enough on that D-line to compensate for it. Let's get into the odds for the Commanders. 9.5 wins is the line for the Commanders. Is this too soon to be saying that the Commanders are a 9-10 win team? 10 to 11 either way. So minus 110, minus 110. Either side. Where have you guys got the Commanders versus that line of 9.5 wins?
Yeah, I've got them under. I think with the veterans, and I think with Dan Quinn as well, they've got quite a hard floor. So I imagine them at least getting 7 wins, 7 to 8. But yeah, it's that Jaden Daniel, magic, which could put them over to like 10 or 11. So I think they're one of them teams where it feels like it's such a range of where they can end up, because I think the floor is around 6 or 7. I think the floor will be 7, but I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow won 11 games, just because how many close games they've won last year. Like it seeps into the DNA and that Dan Quinn kind of spirit where and having all the veterans where they don't lose the game and they pick up these wins where you think, well, like the Bears game last year where how did they win that? And then we're suddenly at the end, end of the season next year, and they're I've got 10 wins somehow. They don't seem like a 10-win team, but they managed to just being a professional, good footballing team. So I'm going to go under. I think they're going to win 8 games, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the other way around.
Yeah, I've cooled a little bit on the Commanders. So I had the last run I had them at like 12. I had 12-5, but I've definitely walked that back. Maybe 8-9 wins, I think, is where they're at. I just think they won. It's not even just close games. We're talking about that they won them at the death, week after week after week, and you're just not gonna carry on doing that. The odds are just not gonna be in your favor, are they, like that for consistently? So I think we're in a position where I think probably 8 or 9 wins for the Commanders. I have definitely cooled on where I thought they were maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago, but yeah, I think 8 or 9. Byron?
Yeah, I've got them low as well. I'm at 7 and 10, which I was kind of surprised I had them so low, but it is a tough schedule. They play the AFC West, the NFC North. Obviously, I mean, everyone in the division does. But those are, outside of the Raiders, maybe. I mean, all teams who I think match up pretty well to the Commanders skill-wise. And yeah, again, the O-line is a big worry for me. Jane Daniels is very special, but sophomore slump exists for a lot of players. We've heard about the Kingsbury dip, famously, on this podcast before. And, maybe we look more at that now as a Kyler Murray issue, but I think a second-year quarterback having a slower year 2 than year 1 is very real. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they get to 10 wins, certainly, but I would certainly be taking the under here. I just think too much would have to go right for them to get to 10.
Excellent. Let's have a look then to make the playoffs. So unsurprisingly, that 9.5 wins has got them right on the precipice of the playoffs. So 5 to 7, yes, to make the playoffs. So seems to think then the NFC and NFC East, you might be able to get in with 9 wins. No, 11 to 10. I mean, they made a surprise run in the playoffs after getting there last year for sure, before getting blown out by the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. But yeah, I mean, let's say if they're at that 9-10 win territory, then they're likely going to be in the NFC, and then maybe there will be a problem in the postseason. Looking at the odds for the division, 9 to 4, so just over 2 to 1 to win the division, to their second place after the Eagles. 17 to 2 to win the NFC, and then 18 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Does 18 to 1 seem? I know they were an NFC Championship team last year, so one step away. But does 18 to 1 feel a little bit short for this team?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a little crazy. Truthfully, I think a lot of it's a Jaden Daniels effect. He is so special. But I mean, the Eagles are 20 to 1 to win the Super Bowl last year, and I think they had a much better roster than the Commanders do right now, certainly. So yeah, I wouldn't be sniffing truthfully any of these. But yeah, 18 to 1 feels a bit silly to me, I must say.
Excellent. Well, let's move on then. We've talked about the Commanders. Let's talk about the Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles, and get into their off-season headlines. Birds of pay. Eagle stars, bank balances are flying even higher. New contracts for Lane Johnson, Saquon Barkley, and Zach Bourne after Super Bowl win. The Eagles don't mess around, do they? Signing their guys at the right times. They've done it again. So Lane Johnson, a little bit older, but Saquon, after that initial free agency signing from the Giants, bumped him up. Zach Bourne, after an incredible, probably just after Saquon, the free agent signing of 2024, with the impact that Zach Bourne had. Just another great example of them just being such a well-run organization.
Yeah, and I think, again, Zach Bourne, especially relative to expectation, he would be the free agent signing of the year. Because I don't think anyone expects him to be like the dominant linebacker on a Super Bowl winning team coming out of New Orleans. So, yeah. And again, I referenced with Washington, with Terry McLaurin, don't Dallas it, don't Cincinnati it. Do Philadelphia it. Do Howie Roseman it. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much to say here. They continue to do things the right way by their best players. You'd never hear a word of disharmony coming out of Philadelphia. I can't remember the last time you did. T.O. maybe. So, you've got to go way back. There probably is a few since, but like realistically, not in the Howie Roseman era. Certainly not in the post-Chip Kelly era of Howie Roseman. So, yeah, I think just continue doing smart things. You might look in a few years and go, oh, they maybe shouldn't have paid Saquon Barkley that second contract because in year 4 he was slowing down. But, the first 3 years you got incredible play out of Saquon and he was happy. So, a lot of credit as well goes to Jeffrey Lurie as well, who's happy to bankroll it, by paying the short-term money, which he can do. And they are kicking a lot of money. I think it's 2029 when the new TV deals will get done. So they're banking on there being a big boost in the salary cap then. And again, with everything else the Eagles do, you kind of expect them to be right because they're very well run, they're very informed, and they just do things a smart way. So again, Howie does it again. MFers, it just seems like we say this every couple of weeks. So
yeah, excellent. Moving on for the Eagles. Is Saquon to break the Madden curse, or will it tackle him first? Is 2024's leading rusher set for another year of video game numbers? We just talked a little bit there about Saquon, obviously the 2,000-yard man last year, set their single season in terms of regular and postseason rushing record with 2,500 plus last year, and was certainly the driving force behind the Eagles' offense. After it took them a couple of weeks for them to work out how to maybe use him effectively and get the best out of him, maybe a month or so. But typically we've seen when somebody goes 2,000 yards, they don't necessarily follow it up the year after. Is Saquon best placed out of the previous 2,000-yard rushers to not replicate, it's harsh, but to get close to what he achieved the previous year?
I mean, it feels like, I don't remember how we spoke about the previous ones, to be fair, but what Saquon has going for him, well, I mean, a lot of things. That O-line's the best, I dare say, in the entire league. I'd be surprised if I can think of one better. They have an incredible O-line coach, Jeff Stoutland. They did lose the right guard, and they're replacing him with Tyler Steen, which maybe not a dream scenario, but I don't think anybody expected such growth last year. So I think the biggest thing that might impact him getting that is maybe resting him, which I think, again, would probably be smart from the Eagles to do, because they're a very, very good team once again. They can lean on AJ Brown and Devonta Smith if they need to. Will Shipley, I think, looks kind of sneaky good, and I'd be interested to see him get like a game worth of real workload. I don't think that's going to be the case, ideally, for the Eagles, but I could see them maybe giving him 5 or 6 carries a game to ease the workload on Barkley. And I think what Saquon's been as well is a real good soldier. Like, we've seen it again when games are out of hand. Take me out, sit me out, let the young guys get their run. Week 18, when he can get the all-time rushing record, which is incredibly, a high accolade. No, just sit me out. I'm fine with that. I want to win a Super Bowl, not get a rushing record. I disagreed with the decision. I thought they should get him the rushing record. I was wrong. They got a Super Bowl, so they were right. I don't know if he'll put up the gaudy numbers again. He has the ability to do so. I just wonder if they'll give him the workload to do so. I think there might be more sensible load management of him. And again, I cannot trust the Eagles to be smart about it. So, yeah, I don't think he'll play badly. I think it might just be a case of, do they want to push him again to that level?
Yeah, the career high 345 carries last year, and why somebody who's 28 going to be turning, be 29 at the end of next season? Why?
Exactly.
Why give him 300 touches if you don't need to? Just use them more effectively and make sure he's still got plenty of gas when it comes to the playoffs. And he doesn't need to be running for 2,000 yards, does he, if he's to win games? That's crazy. Next up then for the Eagles, no sweat on the defense, no worries, and with a number of key defensive departures, including Sweat, Miller Williams, Graham, of course, Brandon Graham, who retired, Darius Slay, who left. Will the Eagles D hit a rocky patch? Do you sort of feel that the Eagles seem to have managed these defensive losses pretty well over the last few years?
Yeah.
Do you expect them to be the same again, or is this too many in one go and too much experience going out the door?
It is a lot. But I think, unlike Washington, we previously referenced, again, their poor ability to draft over the last few years, I think, especially the last couple of years, you can look at Philadelphia and say, Nolan Smith came on down the stretch, especially in that Super Bowl. Can he come and fill in? We've seen the cornerbacks last year take over to a degree. Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. Darius Slay was a bit part by the end. That's what, there is no loss to the Eagles, I don't think. Williams and Sweat are going to be a miss inevitably. But again, we've got Jalen Carter in there. We've got John Davis in there. I kind of sneakily love the Josh Uche signing from the Patriots. Very low money for a player who's flashed a lot of ability before. And I think maybe just the fit kind of wore out in New England eventually. We've got Uzolari from the Giants, who I think is another good fit. Adoree Jackson, who was a high draft pick and has had spells of fulfilling that potential, but not fully. I think another good piece on that cornerback room. And what feels kind of crucial is Vic Fangio's still there. And if you get buy-in and, we heard about he wasn't a good fit with the Dolphins. Well, he's been a real good fit with the Eagles. And I think that indicates more on the Dolphins players' inability to do what Vic Fangio requires of them than it does on Vic Fangio's ability to get the best out of them. Because everywhere else Vic Fangio's been has been a huge success on defense. And then the one I really loved, and again, just classic how he does it again. Jihad Campbell, one of my favorite players in the draft, somehow lost to the Eagles because, of course, he does. And it's just such a perfect fit with Zach Bourne. Jeremiah Trotter, I think, will see more work this season. Nakobe Dean injured right now. I'm not sure when he'll be back, but I think they've just done a good job of, I'm not going to say preparing for these X. It's just strength on strength on strength. You know, when you're a good team, you can take these players who maybe do come in injured, like Jihad Campbell might be, but there's talk that he's going to be ready for training camp. So it's tough to be too pessimistic about the Eagles, I think, despite these losses. You know, a lot of these players, I'm not going to say, I don't think Slay is a huge miss on paper. Milton Williams, I don't want to say was a one-year wonder. That's maybe a bit dismissive, but he certainly had his best year last year. So can they recreate it in the aggregate to be a bit moneyball-y? I think that's probably possible, yeah.
Yeah. I just worry just about the depth. I think, you know, like any Super Bowl when you need to get lucky with injuries, like when you look at the starting like 4 on the line, it's looking, you know, incredible. But then it's more the depth where like you replace his Sweat with Uche. And yeah, I don't mind the Uche signing, but you know, he went to KC, he went back to the Patriots and did nothing. He was like a 1-year wonder. So you're projecting that they were able to coach him up. And a few of the other players where if there is 1 or 2 injuries, like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and that's where they're going to start struggling, which I know most teams would, but it feels like last year they had more depth and like where you knew the flaw of the depth was going to be at these night because, you know, they got Bryce Huff who didn't play at all and, you know, he's gone to the 49ers now. But yeah, you're just gambling. Is Uche going to be another Bryce Huff or another one of these? So yeah, that's the only worry I would say would be the depth on that defense.
Excellent. Moving on then to the next headline. Kellen no more. Eagles promote Kevin Patullo to OC as more his new Saints head coach. Will the offense continue to be sunny? First down, second down, push, touchdown. So more obviously in last year, it was Cowboys, Chargers, Eagles. He's moved on. Does it feel like it's just really easy to pick up the blueprint for this Philadelphia Eagles offense?
In theory, yeah, I guess. But, you know, we did see a big drop-off in 2023 when they switched coordinators and had, was it Brian Johnson? Yeah, Brian Johnson as the OC. I do worry at some point this constant changing for Jalen Hurts and these O-line and, you know, these players that are there year in, year out, eventually that bites him on the butt a little. I think this will be the 4th OC that Hurts has had. I don't think they had one Doug Peterson's first year, but Doug Peterson was the OC essentially. And player caller, they've had Shane Steichen, they've had Brian Johnson, they've had Kellen Moore, and now obviously they have the new OC whose name I forgot, Kevin Patullo. Does that eventually cause an issue learning a new playbook every year, or how much does the playbook change year to year? I think it adds a little element of maybe they don't hit the ceiling, but Sirianni's still there, Stoutland's still there, the line coach. I don't worry too much. I still think the Eagles are the class of the division. And yeah, would you like some more continuity at the OC position when it's successful? Yes. But do I think it's, you know, franchise defining? Probably not, no.
Yeah. And the touch plus has remained, so you know that.
Yes, has remained past that all important vote, which is crucial. And if it didn't, they'd have just found a different way to run a QB sneak that would have worked anyway.
Or give it to Saquon Barkley. Like,
I'll just give it to Saquon.
Again, you're running behind the best O-line in football. They will make it work, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Excellent. On to key transactions then for Philly. We're supposed we've talked about a lot of them, but anybody here that we've not really talked about for the Eagles that, again, we're expecting to have a real positive influence on them in 2025?
There's one that I wouldn't say I'm positive it's going to have a big impact, but we haven't touched on it at all, is the wide receiver 3. So they've got Johnny Wilson, who was a rookie last year, who's like 6'7" and looks like he should be playing basketball maybe, as a unusual weapon in the end zone, certainly. But who's been getting rave reviews in training, mandatory training activities was Terrace Marshall, former Carolina Panthers 2nd round pick. Potential coming in to compete for that wide receiver 3 role. I think he's someone who could be really intriguing. He flashed at LSU as a prospect. I thought he would have a pretty good NFL career, if I must say. Hasn't happened yet for him. But if anybody could take on a reclamation project, we've seen it with Mekhi Becton last year, who, different position, obviously, but a player who was an early round pick and was looking like a washout of the league. I think Marshall could be a sneaky contributor. Not someone you want to draft in fantasy. I don't think that's going to be his role because there's so much going on there. But a wide receiver 3 that can contribute in big moments, I think he could be that player. We've kind of touched on everybody else. I don't think AJ Dillon is a contributor, sadly. I don't think he's got that juice. I think Will Shipley will be the running back too. But yeah, Terrace Marshall's one I've got a little eye on, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I think He's going to play the starting role with Garner Johnson leaving, so he's going to get straight into fire and just make that defensive back room even younger. So he could be the youngest one in the league.
Excellent, good stuff. Right, let's move on to the odds for the Eagles. Unsurprisingly, very favourable for the Philadelphia Eagles. Unsurprisingly for where we're at. And I will fix the screen. So over under for the Eagles, 11.5 wins is their win line. Even money for over 11.5, 10 to 13 for under. Where have you got the Eagles record, guys, for 2025?
Yeah, I have them slightly falling off from last year a little. The 14-3. I have them at 12-5, which, again, they could certainly win a couple more games in there. I think I'd be surprised if it's 10 or below, I will say. So I'd be taking the over 11.5 even money here. Much prefer that to the under odds on.
Yeah, I think they've got a tough start. I think they played out the first 4 weeks. They played 3 division winners in the first 4 weeks from last year. So tough start, but I've got them at 13 or 14 wins. I think maybe 13-4. I like the over here. Even money as well. I think it's a smash. 12 wins. I think they're just too strong on both lines. I think, and that'll be enough to carry them through games. I think. Joe, where have you got the Eagles?
Yeah, I've got them over as well. I think just going similar to you. I think Washington's going to take a step back. I think the Cowboys are going to be slightly better than last year if that can remain fit, but I don't believe there's anyone like challenging them for that division. So I think I can see them with 12 or 13 wins and challenging for that NFC number 1.
Well, nobody's won the division back-to-back for 20 plus years, Joe.
Are you saying it's not going to be the Eagles' fault?
No. This will be the year that stops. Yeah, I think we've
had 4 Super Bowl winners in the NFC East since the last time someone went back-to-back. None of them are the Cowboys.
All the Commanders, yeah.
But I think we've had 4.
Yeah, Eagles twice, Giants twice, yeah. Absolutely. We're in a playoff, 5-1 on, to make the playoffs. You can get 3.5 or 7-2, sorry, for not making the playoffs, plus 350. Anybody want to try and make some money on that? No? Thought not. 4-6 or 6-4 on to win the division, 3-1 to win the NFC, and 13-2 to win the Super Bowl. I think I've got them on my early predictions. I've got them representing the NFC again in the Super Bowl. So 3-1 to win the conference. Obviously, it's not great odds to get all that way, but I just really struggle to see how they're not the NFC representative in the Super Bowl for me.
I think it makes sense that they're the favourites. I don't know if I'll be betting it at such a short price, though, because so much can go wrong. So many one games in the playoffs where you can get bounced. They could have lost to the Rams last year in the snow game in Philadelphia. It's doable. Yeah, I don't think I'll be betting it, but I also have them as a Super Bowl team for the NFC as well. So I certainly think they have the ability to. I just think the price is too short to back it, really.
Excellent. Right. Any more on the Eagles before we move on to our last team? Right, on to the New York Giants. Very intriguing for 2025. Will Brian prove to be a good head coach or be Daboll as shit? Is that what we're going for? Daboll as shit.
They bullshit.
Daboll is Daboll as shit. Is that's the way, right?
I think you should move on.
Joe doesn't know. He wrote the pun and he doesn't know.
Anyway, it was a late one. It was a late one, Paul, that one. So scrambling.
I've also just seen that says Brain and not Brian. Head coach Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen both return in 2025 after a disappointing season. Is it another year of Big Blue Mondays? That was good. So this feels like obviously a lot of change for the Giants. I will get into the detail of that. But the heights of the first year of getting in the playoffs, a playoff win, has been followed by back-to-back shite for the Giants. I think that's fair to sum that up.
A lot of bullshit.
A lot of the bullshit. Given kind of where they're at, is this they have to start winning games and both the head coach and GM are gone?
Feels like it. I think especially the GM Joe Sean, I think was kind of lucky to get another crack at it. In my opinion, I think a lot of franchises he wouldn't have got this crack at it again.
Just Hard Knocks was no favors for him, was it? Because he looked like a fucking idiot.
No, and I do feel a little bit for him because ideally they would have taken a quarterback in the first round last year, but the 3 ones you knew were going to be good went the first 3 picks, and by all accounts, no one had any interest in trading back to where they went. Malik Neighbors is a smash at the 6th pick, but if you haven't got a quarterback, it doesn't matter. If you can't win games, it doesn't matter. I think, it's kind of now or never for Daboll in New York. I think Daboll could still be a good head coach. I think he's shown it he can be. But I think this setup has kind of been jinxed. Maybe not from the start, but as soon as they inked Daniel Jones that long-term deal, which again eventually forced Saquon Barkley out of the building, they were just doomed. It was such a bad decision in the moment. It's never looked any better in hindsight. And now they're trotting out Russell Wilson, who hasn't looked himself in years, let's be fair. I mean, or maybe he is looking himself now, and that's just who he is, let's be more honest. Jackson Dart, we will get to. But yeah, I do think it is. They have to be they don't have to be a playoff team, but I think they have to be pushing 500 to be any chance Daboll stays on next year.
My worry for them is I think they're massively set up to fail this year because they could get to they've got a bye in week 14, and we'll get to the record stuff. They might have 2 wins by week 14, by the bye.
They might have 2 weeks by week 18.
Yeah, it is. The schedule is horrible.
Yeah.
And given they've finished bottom of the division, it's, crazy to think they'd get, obviously, naturally slightly scheduled, but just the division that the NFC East have matched up against, etc. It's just a horrible schedule. Yeah, and you've got the teams. It's just a horrible schedule.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're going into this and the leadership is like, okay, this year might be a struggle, but we've committed to, obviously with the trade, and we'll talk in the detail about getting the quarterback, etc. So actually, maybe they are going to get 2 years. I don't know, because this could look weirdly. They could make some forward steps, but it could still be real ugly from a record perspective.
100%. Yeah, because it feels like the Giants ownership wanted to stick with a head coach. Like they were like a Tiffany franchise, and they always kept their head coaches for a number of years, and then they went through a couple of years of hiring and firing constantly. And I think I agree with Byron. I think Daboll is a good head coach, and they just seem to never get that pristine pick in the draft. They're always 5 or 6. So you have to take a Daniel Jones, and this year wasn't a great quarterback. Yeah, and so you got to take Jackson Dart later on. It's a bit like if they have a terrible year this year and they get the number 1 pick, and how it's it's been set up for next year's draft is going to be a QB one. That do you just give Daboll another chance because he is that QB whisperer? But at some point he's got to show that as well. And if be curious how he gets on with not the greatest QB room.
Yeah, at the same time, I feel like you talk about the pristine pick and all that. I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing. They could have took Josh Allen instead of Saquon Barkley.
I mean, this regime couldn't. They weren't there. It was Dave Gettleman then.
Yeah.
And also, do you believe that Josh Allen would have done the same thing in the Giants?
No, probably not in the New York Giants. No.
It was Jason Garrett then?
2018?
We maybe don't need to revisit all of the 2018 Giants. I'm just making. I don't think he would have been the same though. I think that's 1,000% valid.
It was just a thought. Anyway, next up for the Giants, will Bowen coach Carter to ball out? Giants draft top pure defender at 3 to create scary D-line. Can Carter, Burns, Sexy Dexy and co make quarterbacks? Forget about it. We really do the Tommy DeVito shout. Okay, cool. Abdul Carter. D-line already had some beasts on it. Abdul Carter at 3. Is this the unit that's going to define the New York Giants season? How well they get after the quarterback and how well this defensive line plays.
They should hope so, because this is the premium of their roster. So, I mean, if Carter come in, obviously, we're saying it's premium, but Dexter Lawrence, the best defensive tackle in football, certainly one of them. Brian Burns, a difference maker, obviously. Bobby Okereke, and then Abdul Kati throw in there as well. It's vicious. It is scary. They are going to be a rough matchup for every O-line in the division. I include the Eagles. But I don't know how many teams have won double digits or gone to the playoffs based on their D-line alone. It's going to be rough going, but yeah, and also I don't know what else they could have done. Like, they had to take Abdul Carter. He was the best player available by a lot. There certainly wasn't a quarterback to take there that was worthy of the pick. Strength on strength is a good thing. I didn't even mention Kayvon Thibodeau in that little section there.
I just forgot about Thibodeau.
Yeah, I knew I'd missed somebody out. It's an incredible rotation. They're going to get packages that get them all on the field, I'm sure. It's just how much does it convert into wins that's going to be the big issue, I think, for New York. Yeah.
Yes, complementary football. If the offense keeps throwing interceptions or not scoring points, then teams can just attack through. When you even look at even the back end, it looks pretty decent. They hit with Drew Phillips last year again, Javon Holland in. It's looking a good defense, but if the offense is not scoring any points, then it only can take you so far. And again, it's one of them. Is it going to be another giant season where the defense plays well, gets them to like number 2 or 3 more wins, then you need to get that number 1 pick, and you're still in the same position. And
yeah,
I'm curious how Brian Burns does this year. I was a bit disappointed with how he played last year, coming from the Panthers, where he felt like he was going to take that step to be one of the best pass rushers, but he wasn't really in the headlines of being like a destroy him. I remember all last year we were killing the Panthers for trading away for like what they got, and he was like, okay, probably fair price if you look at last year. So I hope if he can take a step up with everyone else, and you'll start having single coverage and all that kind of stuff, and instead of getting double team, we'll see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah, you have to pick your poison, I think, can't you? Because you can't double everybody on that Giants D line, and obviously you have a strong 4 coming at you. And it will help if they're ahead in games, because it's a lot easier to rush the passer. Rush the passer, Jesus, when you're ahead in games.
They do have Russ the passer as well.
They do have Russ the passer. Well, I'm sure we'll get to him in a second. Right on cue. Have Giants hit the bullseye with Dart? We'll start talking about the quarterbacks. How will the quarterback room shape out? Will Russ cook? Winston preach? DeVito be a made man, or Dart bully his way to be a starter? Very good work there, Joe. They traded up with the Texans to get to Dart at 20. 22, is it 23?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s, yeah. In the draft, realistically, how much of Jackson Dart are we going to see? Or do you think he'll start the season? Or is it going to be Russ? I personally think it should be Jameis Winston, but kind of how do you see this all playing out?
I think, presuming everyone's fit, I think it'll be Russell Wilson to start the season without much doubt, in my opinion. Whether it should be or shouldn't be is kind of by the by. I'm not sure when you throw Jackson Dart in there. It might be week 15. It might not be all season, truthfully. But like you say, it's not a nice start. We've got Washington, Dallas, Chiefs, Chargers, Saints week 5. But then off that, you've got the Eagles, the Broncos, the Eagles,
Niners,
San Fran, Bears. Like, it's brutal. There's not a good spot to go, oh yeah, here, Jackson, here's 4 games to ease your way into the NFL. The end of the season after the bye in week 14, they've got Washington, the Vikings, Raiders, Cowboys. Maybe you give him that run after the bye just to get his feet wet. If you are on under 3 or 4 wins at that point, what's the harm? You will want to take a look at him. Brian Daboll won't want to go out without looking at his rookie quarterback. I can almost guarantee that. So I think if I was setting the over-under, I would probably put it at week 15 and a half, I guess. Will they put him in after the bye or not? And I'll take the under, because there's a chance Russ gets injured. But I think all being well, I think they would put him in after the bye and say, go on, play 4 weeks, let's see what we've got. Give us a decision to make in the first round next year. Or ideally, don't give us a decision to make us know that we have our future QB. I can go to ownership and say, hey, I'm the man to get the best out of Jackson Dart. Look what we've just had last month. Joe Sean doesn't know how to put a roster together. Get rid of him. Give me a new GM who knows how to put a roster together. I can be the QB whisperer. I can get the best out of Jackson Dart. I think it was a good gamble by the Giants. I don't think they gave up a ton, unlike the Falcons, to move up back into the first round. I like Dart's upside. I think the floor is the floor, like as low as it gets, essentially. I think there's a chance that he's just not an NFL quarterback. But I think he's shown enough upside on those players to be like, can I get Josh Allen light here? Or can I get Drake May light? If all goes well, maybe. But I think it's going to be Russ's until they show like we're not competing. We need to turn it over and look at the future.
Yeah, I think Russell will start. I'm not sure if Winston will be on the team come the start of the year. I think it could be a trade candidate in terms of like a team has an injury at backup and someone just says, because what's the point of going from Russell to Winston? You might as well just chuck Dart in and see, is he an NFL quarterback? Because you don't want to end up what the Titans did the year before, where it was like, well, we're not quite sure what Will Levis is. Let's have another year of that, and you just wasted another year. So I'm going to say week 10. I think this team could be struggling up 2-8, 1-9, and it's like why not chuck him in and see where he's at, because Russ cooked, and what's the point keeping him around? So I'll be surprised if it's not Russell Wilson starting.
That's interesting because he's progressed year on year since he sort of started at Ole Miss from 22 to 23, 24. He has got better statistically. Picked up a couple of big wins last year as well, which I think it's kind of garnered him that attention. I think he beat Georgia and Bama, I want to say, for Ole Miss, but I'll have to double check that. I'm pretty sure he definitely beat Georgia. I don't know if it was both or just one. But his performances in those games shone out.
Yeah.
So there wasn't enough for Ole Miss to progress and kind of get to that college football playoff and stuff, and a lot of that was put on him. I'm interested. I've had a good run of kind of predicting how these rookie quarterbacks are going to go these last few years. I haven't particularly got one majorly wrong. I think Dart might struggle. I don't think any of these guys are going to be particularly good in this draft. So I get why the Giants did it. I'm just not convinced, and I don't know. It's easy to say. You can't wait around for a quarterback for 2 or 3 years, I guess. But I think it's going to be tough for the Giants. I just think it's you've got to be looking at 2026 and beyond. But it's just so hard to have that lens in the NFL, isn't it? To go for a season going, well, we're going to be looking to win 3 or 4 games, but take a big step in 2026. I just don't see it. So we'll see. And that kind of goes to the next headline, kind of Giants stuck in an intermission with a roster of young talent and great to solid starters. What is the goal and identity for the 2025 New York Giants? That just plays that point of kind of what we're talking about around there, kind of what they are. Is this just a lost year for the New York Giants 2025, or is this a valuable year in terms of what they may be able to come in 26, 27 and beyond?
Yeah, I think what's just tricky is that you've got blue chip talent there. Sexy Dexter, Brian Burns, Neighbors. A lot of these, well, it feels like when a team's like, for example, the Titans, it didn't really feel like there was someone on there who was like blue chip. So you're like, okay, fair enough. So, but are these kind of players going to accept that? A year in an NFL player's career, it's huge. So do they want to have another wasted one? So yeah, I think it's tricky.
Didn't get much mention because he missed a lot of time, but Andy Thomas is one of the best left tackles in the league as well. Like, these are premium players at premium positions. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, you can't be sitting there. Like, if you're Dex Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, Malik Neighbors is a rookie, he's got no say in the matter. Are you happy sitting in New York? And obviously, I mean, you're well compensated, etc. But it does feel like you're throwing a season away. And again, we've touched on it. Daboll's in his 4th season in New York. Joe Schoen's in his 4th season in New York. This can't, like, what? Like, I can't agree more. I don't know what the goal is. Hope that you've got a quarterback. Like, I don't think it would be fair to say, sight unseen on this roster, it's playoffs or bust. But it feels like for the coach and the GM, it kind of has to be. I don't know how else you can judge progress.
It feels like you're just in limbo, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it really, really does. Right, let's have a look at key transactions for the Giants then. There's one I'm particularly excited about, and I think talked about it pre-draft. 4th round pick, Cam Scatterbo, maybe my favorite player in the entire 2025 draft. Not for pure ability. I think obviously the Giants obviously had a great rookie running back last year in Tracy.
Yep.
They've got another one in Cam Scatterbo. The run he had at the end of the season dragged Arizona State, who were predicted to be bottom of the Big 12, to a Big 12 championship, into winning a college football playoff game. Almost upsetting Texas in a college football playoff game, taking the Texas Longhorns to overtime after a huge comeback. Cam Scatterbo does it all. He'll throw it, he'll run it, he'll catch it, he'll fucking punt it. He's done it all in his time at Arizona State. And just this run, I suppose, it sort of shows kind of where he is. And I won't be able to cover it all, but these are his last 4 games for Arizona State. 28 rushes, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. 21 rushes, 177 yards, 3 touchdowns. 16 for 172 touchdowns. 30 for 143, 2 touchdowns. Those are his last 4 college football games in big games, in conference championships, in playoffs against some of the best teams in the country. I think this guy's going to be absolutely electric. I just hope he's going to get enough touches for the Giants to show it, because when you see Cam Scatterbo in the NFL, you are going to fall in love with him in how he plays, how he runs, so physical. Yeah, and he's just going to be must watch every single week.
Well, I think he'll certainly get enough touches if he's doing the punting. Otherwise, I'm a little concerned. I actually just traded for Cam Scatterbo in one of my dynasty leagues. Someone offered me him for Khalil Shakir, and he'd be like my wide receiver 7. So, yeah, so I'm excited to see him. Very fun watching him in college. He had some of the best tape. Like, it seemed like he didn't really want to run around people. He just wanted to run through them every time, which might be an issue in the NFL because it's not as easy to do. But yeah, I'm certainly excited to watch him and see how he settles in. Yeah, I think he's kind of the fun standout player. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think my favorite Cam Scatterbo, not even play, but in that game against Texas, so Arizona State were down big. He was struggling to get going. Maybe earlier in your maybe late teens, early 20s, when you go on a night out, maybe drink too much too early. Maybe sometimes you'd go throw up and kind of rally through the night. Yeah, tactical chunder or whatever. Cam Scatterbo did that in a college football playoff game. He threw up on the sideline, and then all of a sudden, Texas Longhorns couldn't tackle him.
A man after my own heart.
Unbelievable stuff from Cam Scatterbo. But yeah, he's going to be electric. He's going to be the Giants fans. I think everybody in the NFL is going to love him, but Giants fans will have a new cult hero in Cam Scatterbo. Anybody else who you think is going to make a big impact for the Giants?
Not that we haven't mentioned. No, I think Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter have obviously names to watch. But yeah, Scatterbo is the one to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, let's get into the odds for the New York Giants. Sorry, just needed to get my love for Cam Scatterbo out there. Over under 5.5. So again, that schedule is a huge part of that line. 6-5 over, 4-6 under. Wherever you guys got the New York Giants for 2025.
I think they're going to go. I was going to say I think they go under, but the odds are not amazing, obviously. So I don't think I'd bet on that because like any team can just like sneak 6 wins. It feels like, especially with the blue chip players they've got. But in terms of record, I think they're going to go 4-13.
Yeah, I'm sure I've gotten 4-13 as well. I'm struggling to find 6 wins there. Maybe the split with Dallas, split with Washington. Let's say they beat the Saints, but they're probably on par with where the Saints are, right? Where's your other wins? Maybe against a Chicago, maybe a Raiders. I'm can't find. I'm really struggling to find 6 wins on that schedule.
Yeah, I mean, if those Raiders and Bears games were in New York or Buffalo, I'd be more inclined, I think. But or New Jersey, sorry, not Buffalo. I'd be more inclined. I have them at 2-15. I haven't beaten Washington at home, and I haven't beaten the Saints in Week 5, and that's it for me. I think that roster could win a few more games, but I just really struggle picking them. I wouldn't be surprised again if that defense carries them to a couple of wins somewhere. Maybe Dallas Week 18 if there's nothing to play for. But otherwise, it's really tough to pick them. I will say, I'm not sure where you guys have got 4 even. So yeah, I would take the under certainly. And I didn't put it on our bet sheet, but Giants have the fewest wins in the NFL, 6-1, and I think that's a really interesting bet.
So to make the playoffs, unsurprisingly, with 5.5 wins is the total 17-2. plus 950 to make the playoffs, and no 1-16 to 1 on for them to not make the playoffs, which I think is a pretty safe bet. 30 to 1 to win the NFC East, 100 to 1 to win the NFC, and 200 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Again, I think I need a lot more zeros to be interested in that one.
They are the, what's the word? Not favorite.
Least likely?
Yeah.
Longest odds?
Least likely to win. Yeah, longest odds in the Super Bowl with the Titans. And the division one's crazy. That's 30 to 1 to just win a division. And we've got some teams who are 12 to 1 to win it all. So it's not looking too good.
Not looking good for Blue. Like I say, that schedule is brutal. Finish off the episode with our best bets for the NFC East. I guess I'm first up, Joe. Am I always first up? I am, yeah. So I'm going Eagles over 12.5 wins. So we talked about earlier, the line being 11.5. I like the odds for the extra game. So Eagles over 12.5. I think I've got them at 13 or 14 wins. So over 12.5, 2 to 1. So I'm taking the extra game for the extra bit of value. And for me, and then I've got a Dak Prescott double as my player bet. We talked about it a little bit with RJ. If Dak plays 7, I think if Dak plays 15 games, I think there's a strong chance for this. Basically over 3,800 passing yards and over 27.5 touchdown passes at 2.5 to 1 at 5 to 2 or plus 250. Dak stays fit. This hits. There's no way on earth it doesn't. When you look at when he's managed to play 16, 17 game seasons, he's over 4,000 yards. He's over 25. He's over 30 touchdowns. So this is me betting on Dak Prescott's health, basically. That's where we're at with that. Thoughts?
So I love the Dak one. That's a really good price, 5 to 2. Eagles, excellent. I think, is pushing it a little, just a couple of injuries, maybe tough to schedule, but you do get better value, like you say. So yeah, I like the price. It's not one I would take, I will say.
Excellent. Next up, Joe.
Yeah, I'll go next. So,
Joe.
I initially had the Cowboys over their win total. Obviously, I wasn't a part when you chatted about the Cowboys, but yeah, I've got the Cowboys to make the playoffs just as a wildcard team, but as the Cowboys do, I've got them losing in the wildcard round. That gave me a little bit better odds than the over the 8.5, 9.5 wins, which I had originally, and that's 9 to 2. And then my other one is Jen Daniels, 1,000 plus rushing yards. I think he got around about 850, just below 900. Yeah, so he only needs an extra 100 yards. I think, as Baron said, with that offensive line, not as good as the year before. He might have to rush some more. And he's one of them similar to Lamar, where you think he's going to get sacked for, minus 20 yards, and somehow he gets a 20-yard positive outcome. So a 4 to 1, I thought it was a good little shot. And I think they might do a lot with Debo as well and Eckler to try and scheme him open for low rushing yards. So a 4 to 1, I do like the odds.
Excellent. Byron, take us home.
Yeah, I went with the exact division order, 13 to 2. So Philly to win it, Dallas second, Washington third, Giants fourth. It's kind of toyed around with a couple of things of Cowboys, Eagles to be the top 2, Washington to finish third, but this was the best price by far. And I think you can kind of put in pen the Eagles will win the division, Giants finish bottom. So I'm just going to take the extra value at 30 to 2 of the 2 and 3, Dallas, Washington. So that's why I've gone there. And then CeeDee Lamb most receiving yards in the NFL at 11 to 1. I had a previous bet on our early season bets. I don't know if it made it onto our show, but it made it onto our slide for socials to him to be the offensive player of the year. And I haven't gone away from that, but looking historically, you do need to get to about 12 or 13 wins to get that award. And I'm not sure Dallas get there. So I think maybe just taking most receiving yards might be a better way to play that field. I think CeeDee Lamb is due for, he's not due for a breakout season, but I think he's kind of due for that. His biggest season of his career, should I say. I think he's perfectly set up for it. I think Dak is, we covered it with RJ, but I love the Pickens addition because it frees up more CeeDee Lamb to play from that power slot role, to be schemed more creatively. Not necessarily to have less on his plate, but to be used in more opportune ways and to be less triple or, well, at very least double covered. So, yeah, I love CeeDee Lamb this year. I think he might well end up on a lot of my fantasy teams where I have the chance to take him. So yeah, CeeDee Lamb receiving yards 11-1.
Excellent. Good stuff. Thanks for that, Byron. Joe, that wraps up our NFC East preview. We're on to the AFC North next, so stick around. We've got a great guest coming up for that. Shout out again, thank you to RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys for being a fantastic guest and talking us through the Dallas Cowboys. Really enjoyed sitting down with RJ. Make sure you're following Good Teams Doing Great Teams cover. The audio version of the pod is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Overcast. Video version available on YouTube. Also check us out on Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok at GTW_GTC, and we'll catch you next time.